This is Deean, recording part 4 of the Atlantis Project. The announcement came the next morning, the second emergency town hall meeting. This time, everyone in the town was going to be there. Mama and Papa took us with them to listen. It was nerve-wracking. Something big was going to happen. When we woke up that morning, though, everything seemed to be perfect. The Mastrogi celebration still continued. We could hear the chanting of the older Sagogs making their way to the monument of Nargeen on the eastern hilltop. Papa went away a lot for work. Mama said that he'd been called away to meet some people in nearby cities. But I'm not stupid. I know he kept coming back with brochures of new houses. I know he was looking at new places for us to live. Sagogs, by tradition, could take in other people of their culture in times of crisis. We look after one another. But where would everyone else go? Everyone who wasn't from here and wasn't Sagog. And I thought about Evie and her mum and Max. Where would they go? They came from somewhere hundreds of miles from here. Who would take them in? That night, we crowded into the town hall like mice. Everyone was worried. Everyone was nervous. Our governor, Cedwan Fry, quietened the crowd and began his speech. It was like everyone leaned in to listen to what he had to say. He told us that he couldn't get the compensation needed to save the town. He told us that it would be too expensive for the government to move everyone. Everyone in North Sag had to leave before the town would be lost to the sea. The future was clear. This was it. You'd think that people would be angry and confused, but they weren't. It was worse than that. Everyone was silent. Nobody moved. You couldn't hear a sound. Evie looked at me, and I looked at her. The town, and everyone in it, Sagog or not, would have to evacuate and find somewhere new to live. Then the shouting started. Some people would be crying so much they'd have to leave the room, and amongst it all, I was just confused and thinking what we could do to help. But nobody seemed to care. All they cared about was when they were going to get out of this town, and fast. That feeling hovered over me as we left the town hall and wandered home. There were less tourists sitting on the beach with their campfires now. Cedwan restricted people coming to North Sag for their holidays. But all I kept thinking was, there has to be a bigger solution than this. I was wide awake that night, tossing and turning, anxious to do something. I knew why this was all happening. I tried to tell my mama about it. I'm not stupid. We were always told about how to recycle properly, why using less plastic was more efficient, and cycling to school would be better than taking the bus. And then I thought about the protesters on the promenade. I thought about the seawall. I thought about everything we learned in school about the world, the seas, climate change, the forest fires, videos, pictures, one after the other, bang, bang, bang. This was so much bigger than what was happening in North Sag. But someone had to do something. When I looked around me, no one else seemed to be doing anything. So, I thought it might be up to me. After all, I knew something about the world, nature, and climate change. There had to be a way. My mind was racing, like a film playing over and over in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about what we could do. It must have woken Evie up because she eventually asked, "Are you okay?" And that's when, under the blanket and with a torch, I told Evie my master plan from start to finish.
Deean's love for science and my love for making things would be the perfect weapons for our new project. The plan was simple. It was going to be brilliant. It was going to be life-changing. We were going to tell as many adults as we could why the sea was rising in North Sag, so that they could tell more and more people in the world. But we needed a name. Something that would make people listen. And then I realised, I'm a creative person. I'm imaginative. I've already thought of it. Atlantis, the game, would become our name. Deean and me made the plan like this. First, Gwen let Deean use their computer so we could get everything we needed. Facts, figures, graphs, diagrams, cute pictures of polar bears, everything we needed to know about climate change. Second, with some old cardboard we found in their garage, I painted colourful pictures and diagrams. things that would draw attention. Third, we used the town and what we'd seen and heard as our slogans. We're like old trees, you can't move us. And the dying trees will expose its roots. And the kingdom of Northsag is your kingdom. Lastly, we set ourselves up on the promenade one sunny afternoon, right where those other protesters stood, the protesters that me, Verity and Bridget made fun of. We prepared our script, things we would say to people. Deean would say, "Did you know that we have less than 1 year to reduce the greenhouse gases that are going into the air before the effects become irreversible?" And they would say, "That's nice, Flower. Did you read that online? Well, I never knew that." And then I would say, "Did you know that we have to reduce our fossil fuel burning by at least 15% if we want to keep the world's temperature below 2 degrees? And they would say, "That's nothing to do with me, Flower. Government has to do that, you know." Deean would say to them, "We won't be the only town in the sea, you know. If we stop and think what we're doing, we can help the next generation to protect their own homes." And they would say, "Well, you're a Sagog lad, so you and your family will be fine, won't you?" Our Atlantis project wasn't working. We had to make more noise. Sometimes you have to be the loudest person in the room. So, we packed up what we could, rolling up posters, shoving placards under our arms, and decided that the only way to get people to come to us is by going to them. Weeks passed. We've shouted, taught, paraded, and gave out flyers, and we haven't given in. We've knocked on 100 doors. Some people grabbed a flyer without saying anything. Lots of houses didn't answer us at all. But we've realised, from the boxes of clothes, broken fridges and children's toys left in the garden, that lots of people have left North Sag already. Deean thought it was a good idea to go down South Beach Lane, because there were lots of Sagog families there and he knew some of them. Gossiping is what everybody does there. Groups of women would gossip with their neighbours over garden fences. We went up to them, handed them our flyers we made, and informed them of everything. The melting polar ice caps and the need to reduce how much energy we use. "You know who's to blame for all of this, don't you?" they would say. "China. They have the largest population in the world, and their greenhouse gases are the worst. We should be telling them. No one else." No, that's not the issue," someone else would say. "It's America. If America used all that money they had to help solve the problem and started taking the train to travel in their own country instead of flying, then we would see some positive changes in the world. What about Norway, Saudi Arabia, Russia? Have you seen how much oil they suck from the sea and export to the world?" So many voices, so many opinions. And whilst you think they made sense, none of their grumbling got us anywhere and still didn't find us a solution. We're all to blame. Even Deean told them that Sagogs could eat less meat, as producing meat for humans was contributing to greenhouse gases. How would a Sagog carry on their ancient traditions without their meat, they tell us? What you have to understand, little one, is that it's part of our culture and our traditions. What we hunted was our food. That's how it's always been. And you have to be Sagog to understand that, right, Deean? Heads turned to look at Deean. I looked at him. Suddenly, he wasn't so quiet. And he said, "But you only have to be a human being to understand that in order to survive, then we all have to change. It's hard for you to understand. You're so young," they said. We felt like the enemy. We felt like we'd just make noise. As we turned for Deean's house, I turned to him and said, "These adults are the worst people to speak to, because they have their minds made up. It's hard to change people like that." The weather was turning. We could see a storm brewing over the horizon.
It's really, really hard when your own people think like that. I was taught that we were all a part of nature, and that nature is a part of us. We were all one people, and our people looked after one another. We didn't want to go home yet. Our faces were looking downward at the puddles of water that began to form in the cracks of the road, but we didn't want to give up. And then, that's when Evie said, it wasn't supposed to be like this. When me, Mum, and Max came here, it was going to be our home. Now we'll never get the chance. The road ahead of us still had barriers stopping people from going to the cliffs as they were too dangerous. Evie looked glum. I wish I could see that view from the cliff again, at least once more before we have to leave for good. Without saying a word, I grabbed Evie by the hand and ran towards the barrier. She pulled me back hard. We couldn't go there. It was dangerous. We could get into trouble. I ran towards the cliffs. Don't you want to walk up there? I said. We're not allowed anymore, she said, water dripping from the hood of her yellow raincoat. But I just smiled, grabbed her hand and said, just don't tell anyone. Don't be so nervous. That shortcut led from the bottom of the cliffs through a dark, cavernous pathway, one overgrown with rocks and nettles. It was used by the Sagogs during the rebellion against the foreign invaders, when the rebels would need to get to the cliffs quickly to see if the foreign ships were coming into land. It spirals, intertwines and navigates through the rocks deeper and deeper and deeper until suddenly you're there, right on the cliffs, and the sea view stretched in front of you. The rocks were incredibly fragile, so we couldn't go too far up ahead, otherwise we would fall a long way down into the water. But when Evie saw the view, she was speechless. I had to pull her back a bit as she gazed wide-eyed, mouth open at the rain sweeping across the sea. She said, that's where it used to be, our house. She was pointing to a mush of mud, rock and water. If you looked really closely, you could see bits of garden toys, furniture sticking out of the ground, like they were gasping for air to be seen. Then she said to me quietly, this was going to be our kingdom, just me and Mum and Max. I thought she would cry. She was a strong person, but this was really important to her. I could tell. The next bit she said is the bit I remember the most. If it wasn't for the sea rising, I wouldn't have met you, and we wouldn't have this amazing story to tell. One of our cardboard signs fell into the water. The words, "The kingdom of North Sag is your kingdom," floating feathery downward into the sea, soaked by the windy rain. But we weren't giving up. This is Deean, ending part 4 of the Atlantis Project.